Hello, my name is Stephanie Toman and I'm the ICDL manager of the ICDL programme. Today I'm going to take you through the ICDL module 6, that's the presentation module. It's not going to be as in an actual slideshow itself, it's actually going to be using slides to demonstrate to you all of the areas that you need to know for the syllabus and to pass the tests well. Okay, so I'm going to start with our first slide, which is PowerPoint principles. PowerPoint principles then. So in the exam, you'll be asked some multiple choice questions that will include questions about this area. So be aware of it, note the things that I'm going to discuss. You'll have a question and 4 possible answers. So it talks about PowerPoint being a very impressive piece of software, which it is. It's very easy to use and it does grasp the attention of a large audience. The presentations, however, can be outputted in different ways. So if you were asked where to change the output of a presentation or find the feature, would you know where to find it? Would you know how to change on-screen shows to overhead projectors? Would you know how to change it to producing 35mm slides? Creating web pages for the internet? So what we're going to do is going to have a look at that feature if you're not sure. So if you go to the Design tab, right over in the far right hand side at the top, you can see slide size and drop that down and then you can see a custom slide size. Click on there and as you can see here, it's got a drop down where you can find the on-screen show. You can find A3 paper if you wanted to produce PowerPoint posters, 35mm slides option, overhead option. So this is where you would go if in the test you were asked to change the output feature to something else. Whilst we're in here, be aware of also the orientation. Orientation being portrait or landscape. As in Word, you'll be able to find it in your layout tab. But there isn't a layout tab in PowerPoint, so this is where you would find that feature if you were asked to change it. Also, PowerPoint software can allow you to not just use text, as we know, but pictures, graphs, charts, clips from films, lots of information off the internet. So it's a wonderful tool in presenting things. Another part of the PowerPoint principles that you need to be aware of is it can also produce notes. That's the notes for the speaker, notes for you. And you can see down here, just along here, there's some notes. You could have handouts that your audience takes away. You can print your slides and you can print the outline text. That's the text on the slides only without the all of the pictures and distractions. Okay. Other things to consider most importantly is your audience. So when you're designing your PowerPoint slides, you're thinking about the design color. So you're making sure that they're not too garish, they don't clash with one another. You're thinking about contrast. Is it a light font in a dark background or the other way around so it stands out quite well? Is it the font size the right size so that your audience can see what's going on? You can see that if we're clicking my title slides here and onto the home tab, I have font sizes here. And they generally are quite large when it's a title. They automatically go in by default certain sizes, and your font sizes you can reduce, but don't reduce them too much so that you're keeping your slides simple. Visually, it's important that people see that font as clearly as they can. They can have impairments though, so be aware of that. They can use reading software. You can build information into your pictures and your things so that they can read that using the Alt tab. There's a colour blindness in the audience. You need to be aware of that as well, that somebody may not see red and green in the same way as you do. The simplicity of those slides, for that reason and for many other reasons, is very important. And also, if you're going to put lots of data on, make sure you focus that data. Don't just put all the data on, so you lose the impetus of it and you lose your audience interest. The venue you're going to could be in the same organisation. It could be a completely different place. Be aware of as many things as you can before you arrive: their version, the room size, the layout of the room, the lighting, do they have an overhead projector, and you have every type of backup you can think of before you arrive. If you can't visit it, then contact and ask all of those questions. When you're putting your presentation together to present, you're presenting to academics, children, teenagers. You need to make it appropriate. You need to also be aware of cultural diversity in the room. So please don't, if you can help it, offend anybody with something that you put into your presentation. Try to be aware of that. Too many flashy animations, not a good idea, takes the onus off you, and the audience just gets wrapped up in all of the amazing flashing, spinning, whizzing things that are all going on. The best thing about a presentation actually is, what do you think? It's you. You're the most important thing. You're the one with the personality. You're the one with the flair. You're the one with all the information. You're the one that's presenting that information and aware of all the background information that you've got on your subject area. You're the one that's keeping your audience engaged. You're connecting to them visually, eye-to-eye contact, and you're trying to make it as interesting as you can because you're very enthusiastic about what you're presenting. So be aware of all those things when it comes to PowerPoint principles and the sort of questions that you may be asked. We're going to move on to the practicalities of the software, PowerPoint software, starting with the next slide, which is going to be PowerPoint screen. Okay then, so the PowerPoint screen is quite intuitive in itself, and most of you know a screen by now. You use lots of applications. So you've obviously got your ribbons, you've got your viewing pane. These are placeholders that are within a PowerPoint slide. But the main one I like to concentrate on is the status bar, which is down here. Most of us know it's there, we just don't know what it's called. So in the exam, sometimes you're asked to click on the status bar or indicate where the status bar is with the green arrow, so make sure that you're aware of that. But with regard to everything else, it's pretty much as you know, so I'm not going to take too long on this, and we're going to move on to the next slide, which is the help slide. There is an area called help, which they will ask you about. It's no longer the question mark that it used to be, and you can see at the top of the screen next to the view tab, you'll see the help option there, and you would be asked to type something in there and then just go to help. So that's quite straightforward. Getting started, section 1. This is the sections that I'm talking about are the sections within the manual itself, the BCS approved manual. So I'm covering those areas, but doing it in this method, using this method instead. So we've looked at the PowerPoint principles, we looked at the screen. We know how to create a new PowerPoint. File extension before we move on to the red areas on the slide. Let's have a quick look at that. So if we go to the File tab and into Save As, because this is not been saved before, it's not existing. In the exam, always use the Browse, because by using the Browse, you bring up the dialog box. And remember, in the exam, we save to the Z drive and we open from the Z drive. So you should see a Z drive up here. By Z drive, it's usually got brackets, as you would with a C drive, and a Z and a colon. So you'll know it's the right one. Your name of your presentation is going to be here. They may ask you to change that. Always keep your extension if it's there. And then your file extension choices are here. So the usual default PowerPoint is a PPTX. If we click on there, you can see there's a PDF. There's version that suits older versions of MS Office. There's a template, etc. So it's all in here, Office theme. And then you would just click on Save and you'd go back to your presentation. So just be aware of that. The options area that deals with preferences would be concerning the username and the default file location. So they would be asking you questions regarding these two things. So the username, if we go to File, into the Options, the general proofing tab, the general tab above proofing here is the default tab, and your username options are just along here. So you may be asked to overtype the existing username and add a different one. If you were asked to change the default file location, on the Save option coming down underneath proofing, you'll see it's here. So there's your default local file location. You may be asked to change that in some way, so you'd overtype something in it. Avoid deleting the whole thing and typing everything in, because tend to make spelling mistakes and that could get it wrong. This is where your files will be automatically saved to, your default file location. So you may want to change it from your H drive to your C drive, to a desktop, etc. So that's where you would change that. And then in the exam, obviously, you would OK once you changed it here. Okay. So that's your area with regard to preferences or options. Minimize ribbon. In exam, a right click on the mouse will place a green arrow there. In the real world, you would collapse it, and that will show you know what you're doing. Double click on it, and it's back. One feature to be aware of, though, that we don't tend to use in PowerPoint is the Switch Windows feature. It's in the View tab. This window switches between the windows of different PowerPoints. So if I just go and open up another PowerPoint, so you can see that one, I won't update the links. And if we go to the view again, switch windows, I can switch back to the one we were originally. So instead of going down here and switching there, try to use this feature, because this may be greyed out anyway in the exam, and that takes me back. So I've switched between windows. Okay. Be aware that all these areas here are pretty much the same in all the applications, particularly these two here. Okay. Moving on to the design templates, section 2 in the manual, we're going to look at design tab. So design tab we looked at earlier. You may or may not have remembered that's where your output is. And this is where we're going to find format background as well, if you're going to use that. So remember those two little features over there. Designs are all here. Templates, hover on them, you'll see a name, Atlas, Banded, Droplet, and back to the one we were using. So if you're asked to use a particular one, that's what you would do. If you want to change the views, you've got the view up here. So you've got the normal, which is what we're in. We've got the slide view, where you can drag, drop slides. You can hide slides and overview the whole of the presentation in that view. You've got a notes page. So if you're putting something into a speaker note, so you want to remember for your presentation, you put them in there. And if we look at this in the normal view on that slide, it's actually down here. So that's the speaker notes and the notes page as well. Okay, so just be aware of that. The one I didn't look at was the outline views. If you go back to the slide that we're using, and it's got this quick editing view. What view for quick editing purposes would you use? Typical question. And that's the outline view. So the outline view is dealing with text, and you don't get bogged down in all of the pictures, the animations, etc. It's a really good way of overviewing and editing, but overviewing it that your presentation actually flows as well, a bit like an essay rather than just slide by slide. So back to normal. The zoom feature may seem a bit, why are you demonstrating that to me? Because I've got a slider, I know how to use it. But in the view tab, once again, there is a zoom feature where you can put in particular data. So you could put in a 71. 71 is very hard to do on a slider. Exactly. So that's one to use if you've got a 1 or something difficult in there to actually enter. Okay. With regard to the, sorry, one sec. With regard to the last thing before I go, onto the next slide, the slideshow, you can start from down here, bottom right. And you can also start from the slideshow tab, from the beginning, or from a current slide. If I drop that down, you can see on here it's got slide Shift plus F5. Remember that if you want to start a presentation from a particular slide without going into slideshow tab, you can use a Shift plus 5 and that will do it. Okay? So that's moving on now to the actual slides from slide section 2 to here. That's still on section 2, but now we're looking at the slides. So we've done the design, now how to use them correctly. So in the Home tab, you have the new slides here, different types. They've all got their names, as you can see, for different features. You can add a new slide by either clicking on the slide before where you're going to add it, and then put in a particular, let's put in a title and content slide. Let's delete it, that's how we did that one. Or you can insert it in a particular place by clicking between the slides and doing the same thing, and then delete it. The layout feature, which looks very much the same, is about changing an existing slide layout. So we've used this one, and we've got at the moment, if we go into layout, we have a title and content type. And we can change it to a to content. And you can see a very slight difference there in it's changing. Go back in, it's to content, back to a title and content. So that's changing existing layouts. With regard to dragging slides, you can drag here just like you did in the sort feature down here, slide sorter. As far as the, let's just go back on here, the duplicate, you've got a copy and a duplicate. Duplicate will keep formatting on slides and designs and things like that. Copy will just copy a slide from somewhere else and bring in the basics. So it's particularly when you're going to take something from another PowerPoint. I mentioned the background colour earlier. Do you remember where it was? Design, format background. If you don't want to go that way, if you right click on a slide, watch where you right click. This will change the colour of the placeholder because I've done a right click there. This would change the colour of the text box because it's got format shape there. There's also, if I just come over a minute, there's also, if I close that, you've got text boxes going on here, so be very careful. So what we're looking for if we right click is to get right to the edge outside of a text box or a placeholder and do the format background there. So then you can change it to whatever. Notice that when you do that, what happens with your design, it completely disappears and overrides it. So be really careful if that's what you really want. Okay, you can select all, apply here, or not. That's why it's there as a reminder. So that's the slides section 2. The next one we're going to do before we finish this section of slides, I'm going to do a quick look at all the formatting that we will find on the Home tab. I've got some examples here. I'll just close off this format background pane. And I've put down here all of the different areas in the formatting that you will see up there. So if I click on something, then they'll all light up. So on the first one, you've got the grow and the shrink, which is pretty obvious. Nice quick way of doing things though. You've got the format painter. We have this in Word as well, where you're copying the formatting of something and pasting it over another area. So if we did this in red and bold and shadow, and we clicked on the format painter once, we could highlight another area once. Undo. If, however, we copied that, highlighted that and double clicked on the format painter, we could do it more than once. So that's how the format painter works, and make sure it asks you to do the copying of formatting. That's the feature that you use. Alignment, if you highlight them all, and spacing, there's your spacing. Hover on them, you'll see they go to the one that you want. And if it's to do with alignment, you've got your usual alignments that you would have in Word or something like that. Change case is quite useful. Let's highlight the capitalised module 4. Drop down the little large capital A, small a, and you've got your different, got your lowercase, sentence case. This would be really useful. Capitalise each word. You can't do that on this one because there's only one word. But this would be really useful for large amounts of text as well, obviously. When we look at the cut and copy and paste, it seems quite obvious, cut, copy and paste, but the thing is, we always remember if you're cutting something, you're moving it. So if they say move a picture from that slide to that slide, they mean cut it and paste it. If they want it on both places, then you're copying it or duplicating it and then pasting it. Okay, so just remember, cut means move. Headers and footers, those of us that are more au fait with PowerPoints, a lot of us, there's no need to use the master slide or slide master in this feature. If you go to the Insert tab, the header and footer is very simply there. It's not putting pictures in or things like that as you would in a master slide, we'll see in a moment. It's about just turning these features on and off. And if you apply to all, they've all disappeared. You can see, back into the header, tick those back on again, apply to all, and then your footer and slide number is back on. So just use that feature there. Automatic updates or fixed, tick on there, click on that for fixed, click on that for automatic updated. Okay, simple. Spell checks up here on the quick access toolbar. It's also in the review tab, and it's also on a function key F7. So whichever one you want to use. Didn't pick up that one. Let's change it again. Just to get it to work, because I've probably done it before. And it's got that no suggestion. So let's have a look, see if we can just make it less obvious. Try it now. And it's got a suggestion at last, and we can change. So that would be going through the spell check for your exam. The final thing is the increase and decrease list levels. Basically, they're just on the Home tab, and they're the two little features here. So if I wanted to increase the list level of these, I'd be making them sub bullets. So I'd be clicking on there and back out again. I'd be increasing. So increasing and decreasing. So you've got hover, increase, hover, decrease. So use those when they ask you to do that feature. Okay, that takes us on now to the master slides, which I'm going to do next. I'm just going to leave this section and we'll do that as a little section on its own if you want to continue.